Hi, welcome back. When you look at sibling resentment, unequal caregiving, and family tension, almost all of it can be traced back to one place. Parents failed to lead early. Not because they're bad people, not because they wanted you to suffer, but because most parents never talk openly about aging, care needs, or expectations for their children. Throw this on top of the fact that there's just no classes out there to address aging and preparing. Yet the truth is this: parents have the greatest power to prevent sibling imbalance and the resentment that follows if they step up and lead before the caregiving crisis hits. Why do you never hear about families with strong parental leadership? You rarely hear stories about parents taking a strong lead in planning their future care because those families simply don't experience that type of chaos that everyone else talks about. They don't post about the chaos on TikTok or Facebook. You just don't hear about it. When a parent steps up early, communicates their wishes, assigns roles, documents decisions, and makes sure responsibilities are shared, the whole caregiving journey runs so much smoother, quieter, and far more peacefully. There's no dramatic sibling fallout, no last minute decision battles, no frantic scrambling, and no one child drowning in resentment. And families who don't experience chaos rarely feel the need to post about it, complain about it, or seek help for it. Their caregiving journey is steady, predictable, and emotionally grounded. So it stays invisible to the outside world. Meanwhile, the stories that dominate caregiver communities are the ones where parents avoided the conversation entirely. These are the situations where siblings fight, one child becomes the default caregiver, decisions are made under pressure, and everyone is emotionally raw. The absence of leadership creates chaos, and that chaos is loud. That's why it feels like every caregiver is struggling while no one else seems to have their act together. The truth is simply this: strong parental leadership prevents the chaos you hear about every day. But because those families aren't in crisis, their stories go untold. It is our belief that every adult is responsible for planning their own long term care, and parents have a moral obligation to lead this conversation in their families long before a crisis hits. It is not fair or healthy for a parent to avoid discussing their future needs and quietly expect their child just to figure it out. When a parent refuses to plan, communicate, or document their wishes, the burden automatically lands on the most responsible child, creating overwhelm, confusion, and resentment that could have been prevented. Taking ownership of their long term care doesn't mean a parent has all the answers. It means they open the door, set expectations, and make sure their children aren't left to carry an impossible load alone. So, off the bat, one of the main reasons that you might be experiencing caregiver sibling resentment is because your parents failed to plan. This class shows how parents can take the lead, the conversations that must be initiated, the scripts they can use, and what happens when one child won't help, and how the estate can be structured to protect you, the caregiver. At the very least, what I hope you will see here is that you will need to start having this conversation with your own children for your own future care. If you're not having these discussions, now is the time before it's too late and you hand down the caregiver chaos to another generation. Here is why parents must lead. When parents avoid the aging conversation, here's what usually happens. First, the caregiving role goes to the most responsible child, the nice one who may have difficulty saying no or setting boundaries, or it goes to the closest one in proximity. Secondly, siblings assume someone else will handle all the care, and then what happens is that it typically falls in the lap of one of the children who are not prepared. The third thing that happens when parents avoid these discussions is that resentment grows because the workload naturally falls on the one who cares most. The children didn't expect or plan for caregiving. The parent allows another child just to get away with not being involved. The fourth thing that occurs when these conversations don't happen is that no one knows what the parent actually wants, especially when later on they lose their cognitive abilities. Nothing was ever discussed. And finally, when these discussions don't happen, decisions become emotional landmines. Parents must lead because siblings listen to parents far more than they listen to each other. A parent's voice sets expectations, clarifies roles, and brings the whole family together. When a parent doesn't lead, what ends up happening is one sibling is pitted up against another. There is a conversation that parents must initiate. And so, in order to explain this, I want to paint an ideal scenario. And it never goes this way, but just follow along for a second and think about this ideal scenario where a parent leads the conversation. I want you to imagine a Saturday afternoon. The parent calls all their adult children together, whether in person or on a Zoom call, and says, I want us to talk about something that is important before life forces us to. Everyone settles in. No one is panicked. No one is in crisis. It's simply a thoughtful moment of planning. The parent begins, I love all of you, and I don't ever want my care to become a source of stress for you in the future. I don't want it to become resentment against one another or confusion. So we're going to talk about what I want and what I don't want, and how we can make sure no one is carrying everything alone. The room softens a little bit. Everyone leans in, curious. The parent continues, here's what matters most to me. I want to stay home as long as it's safe. When that's no longer possible, it's okay with moving to an assisted living. I don't want aggressive treatment if it won't improve my quality of life, and I want comfort to be the priority. Then the parent shifts to responsibilities. Now, let's talk about how each of you can help. I'm not expecting any one of you to do everything or pay for everything. Your strengths are different, and that's a good thing. The parents look at each child and say, you're good with logistics. You could help with managing my appointments. You live close by. Maybe you could assist with errands. And you're great with finances. You could help manage the bills or insurance. We'll divide things in a way that feels realistic. The parent then names the decision maker with confidence, not apologizing for it. The decision maker for legal and medical decisions. I'm naming your sister as my healthcare and financial power of attorney. She understands my wishes and she's comfortable making tough decisions. I expect all of you to respect her role and back her up. No tension, no confusion, just clarity. Finally, the parent addresses fairness. If one of you ends up doing more of the hands on caregiving, and realistically that may happen, I want you to know I've taken steps to make sure that person is supported financially. No one will be sacrificing their job, wallet, or health to take care of me. The siblings all nod. There's relief in the room, relief because someone is finally leading. The meeting ends with hugs, a plan, and a sense that everyone knows their role. No mystery, no silent expectations, no future landmines. This is what it looks like when a parent takes the lead. Clear, respectful, honest, preventing resentment before it can even grow. Now, I know this is dreaming. I know that this is just the ideal, but at least we can see what the leadership role looks like. Parents must clearly tell their children what they want, staying home versus going to a facility, a discussion or compromise if it gets too much. It should never be the scenario where a parent says, I want to remain home forever when they know that a child can't possibly take care of them forever. Parents need to talk about medical decisions. quality of life, expectations, when to stop pursuing medical treatment and use comfort measures only. It is unfair to leave it to your child to have to decide that at the last moment. Parents need to talk about how caregiving responsibilities will be shared. Who does what help looks like, what is not acceptable. Silence, avoidance, ghosting. Who does not or cannot help? Who will hold medical power of attorney and financial power of attorney? Who is making the final call in a crisis? One person in charge. Don't leave it to care by committee. It needs to be discussed how they will support the primary caregiver financially, emotionally, through clear documentation and boundaries. What about the siblings who don't help? Parents can't assume siblings will figure it out because if it's not planned, they won't.